Bad feeling brakes can completely throw out a whole bike for me. It's really, really important to get a nice positive feel. And although it's a very subjective thing, how you might want them, there's no reason you can't maximize your brakes. So what we're going to look at is ways to fine tune them without reaching for the bleed kit. So this is stuff like setup and all that sort of shabazz. So we're going to get into it, look at some really kind of, fine tuning details and go from there. Before we even get to our bike, we're going to ask ourselves some existential questions. Why are we here? Why would you buy jeans with holes already cut into them? And where does the oil go in my brakes? Now, sometimes people complain about spongy or gradual feeling in their brakes, and they immediately think it's a bleed issue. But I'm going to explain why that's not always the case. Now, back in the day, they used to use what we call a closed brake. This means that the whole system was entirely sealed, and as the volume of the oil increased under heat, the lever throw, the amount of lever travel would be reduced. So think of your Hope C2s or your giant MPHs, and people would actually run their brakes further in than they'd like in anticipation for that oil expanding and then having reduced travel further down the run. I don't think we really appreciate how good and consistent modern brakes are, because what they use is what we call an open system. So on every single kind of modern brake lever, you will find a small hole. Now that hole basically leads to a kind of a small pocket, a small air chamber, and there's a diaphragm in there. Now the diaphragm keeps the oil and the air chamber separate, and as the oil temperature heats up and the volume expands, it pushes on the diaphragm, which in turn pushes on the air chamber. Now that little hole is to self-regulate, and air will kind of be coming and going as you please. Now let's look at the systems used within a Shimano brake, for instance. Now Shimano uses essentially one pressure system inside the brake, which is gravity bled. That means that oil works its way towards the bottom and air works its way towards the top. That's why a bucket system is so effective on a Shimano brake. TRP is another example which uses a similar system. Now this is robust, it's simple, but it does sometimes have issue in terms of when the pads wear faster than the system can adapt, which I'm going to get to in time as well. Other brands, including say SRAM or Avid as they were known, use two pressure systems within their brakes. So at the lever, you have the high pressure system, and in the hose and the caliper, you have the low pressure system. You might have seen that when you're bleeding the brakes, first you cycle the oil through, bleeding the low pressure system, before moving on to the lever, which is the high pressure system. Now, the low pressure system controls the power at the caliper, and the high pressure system largely controls feel. But what happens is, like any two pressure systems, they eventually try and equalize over time. So today a bit later on, we're going to look at readdressing that balance. So now we're going to talk about what we're going to use within this service. So first on the list is the oil that your system uses. SRAM used DOT 5.1, and if I used mineral oil, which you'd find in a TRP or Shimano system, it would actually corrode the seals and vice versa. So please use the oil specific to your system. That's number one. Number two, Mr. Cable Tie. I have a plan for this, don't worry, you'll understand in a bit. Number three is another weird one, cotton buds. These are so good for cleaning small areas, and I've got big sausage fingers, there's no way I'd be able to clean pistons without these bad boys. Then we've got a 4mm and number 5mm, T25, a Park pad tool spacer, which is the unsung hero of many workshops, a very small and very clean flathead screwdriver, a thimbleful of brake cleaner, and a plastic tie lever. Last but not least, we have, yet again, some very clean, fresh prep blue towel. Obviously you can use any old rag or kitchen towel, whatever, but as long as it's clean. And of course, some rubber gloves. Please wear gloves. I've got the horrible leathery hands of a Gibraltar pensioner, and I still wear gloves. If you've ever got some corrosive fluid on your hands and your skin's come away like wet tissue paper, you'll understand the importance. But the gloves aren't just protecting us, they're also protecting the bike from contamination from you. If you don't use gloves, make sure you really wash your hands properly before you start. All that kind of natural oil that your hands secrete can contaminate rotors, it can contaminate brake pads. And if we're going through all this effort to making sure our braking system is as good as possible, why compromise it with something so basic? When we're handling brakes, I want to be really careful not to touch the face of the pad, not to touch the braking tracks on the rotor. I want us to really think about and concentrate on putting all these small changes in to really maximize our braking. So as you can see, I'm taking the wheel out of the bike, putting that disc far, far away from any risk of oil. I'm going to do the same with the pads as well. It's such a stupid way to contaminate anything. So, let's be sensible. Let's get our thinking caps on. So that, Mr. Wheel, you can live down there. Weirdly enough as well, normally I'd put the axle back in, which is only a small detail, I suppose. But we're going to be doing a lot of work on this caliper and we need it out of the way. So I'm just going to put that on the side there. So the first thing we're going to get into is basically making sure our pistons are running with as little, with having to overcome as little friction as possible. Some of the times there can be so much friction within the seals on the pistons that the reason your brake feels like it's spongy is because right from the first bit of that lever throw, it's actually having to overcome a lot of friction. So it's not free falling until it hits, the bite point. So we want our piston to be running really smooth. So what we're going to do is we're going to lube up our pistons with the correct oil. So if you're using Shimano, that's mineral. SRAM, Avid, that's DOT. And always, a 2-second Google can save you a lot of bother. So depending which brand you have, if it's perhaps one of the other ones, just give it a quick check to make sure it's all good. So let's get into it. With our calipers, we will see a small slot where the rotor goes in. Now an Avid takes a 4mm Allen key there really neatly. On a Shimano, I think it's a 3mm, it normally is. We want to get the largest Allen key in there that you can fit without cramming something in there. Because we're actually going to use this as a control point just to get the pistons sat out so we can clean them. So I've got a 4mm tucked in the slot there neatly, and I'm just going to pump the brake. As you can see, the pistons are coming straight out. Sometimes one by one, sometimes all together. The more active a piston is, the quicker it comes out, but what we want is a really well balanced caliper where in an ideal world, all the pistons would come out the exact same amount at the exact same time. That doesn't always happen in reality, but we can normally get it pretty close. So now this is where the fun begins, so my gloves are on. What I've got here is a small thimbleful of brake cleaner, which is all you really need for this, and I've got a cotton buds. What we're going to do, we're just going to work around each cotton bud individually. You can see, these are actually relatively new brakes. You can see how much dirt and grime comes off there. I think because they get so hot under braking, and all that dirt, when you press the pistons back into the caliper, will be working their way towards the seal. But we're just going to do this outer edge, get them nice and clean, spick and span. And then I've got my DOT fluid. And what we're going to do, we're going to get our cable tie and use it as like a little applicator for DOT fluid. Now we're not trying to douse them, we're not pouring this over the whole caliper, we're applying small amounts of it to the pistons, okay? So you just start at the top and just wipe around. You almost want it to be just one ring going around the piston. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get a plastic tie lever. Now, you'll often see people use metal tie levers or, these pad spacers on pistons. It's something I'm loath to do just because these sometimes can be quite kind of brittle metal and they can just shatter. I'd rather not run the risk and use a plastic tie lever personally. We're going to go back to the 4mm. We're going to put the 4mm between two of the pistons and we're going to push the other two back with the plastic lever. If we don't do this and we don't have that 4mm in there, as we push one back, that piston, one of those pistons could just pop out the caliper and then you've got to bleed the brakes and everything, and it's quite a palaver, so we don't really want to do that. So with that 4mm in there, we're just going to work at these two pistons and just tease them back in until they're sitting nice and flush. Remember, that face of the piston should be parallel with the caliper, it should be going in squarely, okay? Now we've got those two in flush, we can just work on bit by bit, just moving these ones back. Annoyingly enough for everyone, is actually going to put that 4mm and I'm going to bring those pistons back. What I actually am trying to do is lube the seals and not leave any residual oil just left hanging about in the pistons, because that's only going to increase the likelihood of contamination. We're just going to bring them out and clean them again. Now that the brake piston out, we just go back with our thimble and cotton bud and basically just make sure everything is spick and span. Look at that. So then we go for our 4mm again, tyre lever again, we just push them back in one more time. So now everything is completely flush within the caliper. Now that's really important. For the third and final time, we get our cotton bud, we get our thimble, and we're just going to make sure it's all tidy. There we go. Beautiful. Sweet, so I'm pretty confident that is nice and clean. Because our gloves could have oil on them, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take them off because, you know, there's quite a lot of oil going on there. And I'm going to be incredibly careful. I'm not going to get a set of new gloves, although you could do. I'm just going to be really careful. I'm going to touch the backing plate and the side of the pads. I'm not, to repeat, not going to touch in there, okay? And then we're just going to drop them down. Make sure they're seated all good. Perfect. We're going to get the all-important retaining bolt. Nobody is good enough a mechanic to not have to worry about this little fella. I know somebody who I consider to be a very good mechanic, and he forgot to put one of these in on a World Cup finals run. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, dearie me. Now, what tends to happen is oil from the high pressure system migrates to the low. This is just wear and tear, this is use, this is the two systems being exposed to each other. Once we rebalance these systems, you'd be amazed at how much positive feel comes back into your brakes. Now what this involves is I'm going to pull on the brake until I get a nice bite, and I'm going to push both pads back whilst gently flicking the lever. What this does, it actually opens up a port on the lever end and it lets that oil get back into that high pressure system. At this point, we're going to reintroduce the wheel. I'm going to look at the alignment and I'll tell you how that can affect braking performance too. Now you might have noticed on some calipers or adapters, they actually come with these kind of cone washers. Now what this is to do is to make sure that this braking surface here is perfectly perpendicular to the braking surface. So I want you to imagine that if these were an angle, it would twist the whole caliper on its side. And these kind of, you know, can account for that lack of tolerance, I suppose. Also, when you're having a really big adapter or a really big rotor and the braking surface is farther away from the axle, the more that it exaggerates this problem. So I'm actually, taking no notice of what the pads are doing, and I'm getting that rotor centered exactly in the caliper. It spins freely because the pads aren't out at all, but it's well and truly square. Now what we're going to do is we're going to reach for our very small, very clean flathead. And we're going to gently, and gently being a very important word, pull on this lever here. As we pull it, we'll start to get a good idea of what the piston's about to do. And this front right piston is slightly overactive, so I'm going to let go. That's all done for a moment. And using the edge of this Phillips screwdriver, I'm going to go behind the pad, just opposite to it, and push that caliper back so it's flush again. This will mean the other pistons then have kind of a bit of a head start. Sensational. Let's have a feel of that bite. Oh, that feels incredibly positive. But like I said, it's still worth doing just a few times, cycling that brake whilst riding, just to wear that pad exactly parallel. You can also, if you have really cooked your brakes, the tried and tested tip, don't be afraid just to get some sandpaper there and scrub up the rotor, not in the direction of travel. Same again with your pads. If your pads are ever like shiny or anything like that, just take the edge off, and that's going to really increase bite and braking performance. It's a bit like, you can have the best suspension and the best geometry in the world, but if your tyres aren't gripping because the pressure's wrong and you've got 60 psi, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good your bike is. Similar with your brakes. If your pads and your rotor are absolutely cooked, you can have the best bleed, the fancy pants 4 pots with ultimate power. It's not going to make any difference. That's the contact point. That's the most important point. So contamination, going to go on. It's probably going to become a theme. You're all going to hate me. I don't care. Contamination's important. And those are some of my top tips for how to optimize your braking performance. If you're wondering who the hell I am and what I'm doing in the GMBN Tech studio, please click here to see my introduction on the GMBN Tech Show. And if you came here by happy accident, you're not really interested in it, but you did want to find out how to bleed your SRAM brakes, click down there. Thanks, like and subscribe. Bye-da.